Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so delighted you've joined me for part 4 of our story, and what a fascinating story it is. We now realise that Lucas Fairweather has been abducted by 2 Bigfoot, and the 2 children who set him up, well, Danny set Lucas up. He knocked him on the head and he was comatose and tied to a tree, and the Bigfoots took him away. And of course these young teenagers are fearing the very worst, that Lucas Fairweather may be dead. So we're about to find out what did happen to him. So let's continue with part 4 of our story. Moments later, we heard footsteps. Oh my God, someone was coming. We did not need this, not at this moment, not after everything we'd just been through. My stomach began to heave and groan, as if just beating was too much like hard work. Even my knees seemed to be giving way beneath me. Someone was coming down that footpath, and they were too close for comfort. My brother grabbed me quickly. We returned to the sanctuary of our hiding place. We were relieved to see it was Janice Kildare. Her face looked flustered with excitement. There was an eagerness to her gait. She was looking around the woodgrove for Lucas Fairweather. Her eyes then fell to the earthen floor, as she observed Lucas's stamp collection, well, the leather album, that is, lying messily splayed on the ground. She probably knew Lucas would never treat his property this disrespectfully, as this was a valued stamp collection to him. We heard her saying, "What the hell?" She picked it up and collected all the stamps, replacing them into the manila envelope. And with a look of concern dappling her face, she called out Lucas's name. "Lucas! Lucas, are you there? Lucas! Lucas, it's me! It's Janice! Lucas!" After waiting for a while and deciding that Lucas was not here, she promptly left the woods, probably very disappointed that her rendezvous with Lucas had amounted to absolutely nothing, for she had probably hoped it would be of a romantic nature. "My God!" said my brother, after Janice had left the woods. "Did that happen, bro? Did you see the size of those gargantuan things? They were monstrously huge." He whistled. "What the hell? Have you ever—" I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, like the bubbles in champagne. I glared at my brother. "Look what you've done, Danny! This is all your fault. I hope you're proud of yourself." "What do you mean, all my fault? You had a part in this too, remember, Eric? Or have you conveniently forgotten about that? It's so typical of you, Eric, to just renege all responsibility. I may remind you, you are as involved as I am. I did not put a fist to Lucas's head, did I? Nor did I remove his clothes and tie him to a tree half naked. What you did was psychopathic, Danny. It's not funny. You're an animal. Do I look like I'm laughing, Eric? Of course I'm not. I didn't expect for things to go so pear-shaped, did I? You have to admit the plan would have worked superbly if those 2 burly, hair-covered things hadn't come along to ruin everything for us. It was bad timing, that's all. Very bad timing." "Bad timing? Is that what you call it?" I scoffed. "You were the one who wanted to humiliate Lucas in front of Janice Kildare," I reminded him. "I thought you were going to throw a snake at him or something like that, but no, you went far too far. You hit him across the head with a fist. You made him concussed. Whatever way you look at it, bro, it was assault. There's no other word for it. You assaulted Lucas. When those creatures found him, he was out for the count. What if they eat him up or do something dreadfully horrible to him? They were terrifying. Did you see the size of them, Danny? I feel so sorry for Lucas Fairweather. He deserved none of this. All because you were just so jealous of him. You couldn't bear it that all the girls in class fancied him. You couldn't bear it that he was so successful at math and all those subjects. You were so jealous of him. And now you're going to have to live with what you've done. He could be dead right now, for all we know, thanks to your cauliflower idea. For your sake, I do hope that Janice Kildare was worth it." My brother grabbed me by the shoulder. He looked at me with a warning glare. "No one knows about this, Eric. Understand? None of this ever happened. Get it? Lucas Fairweather may be dead. You could be right about that. And if I go down for this, so do you. Get it? Besides, I never killed him, did I? I simply gave him a blow to the head. And of course I regret that, because I think I hit him harder than I should have done. That's your problem, Danny, isn't it? I don't think you're aware of your own strength. You gave him a big blow. But maybe it's just as well, because if those creatures do eat him up, which I'm certain they will do, then at least he'll be out for the count. You really think they're going to eat him? My brother asked me. Of course I do. Why do you think they took him away like they did? Oh my God, said my brother, running his hands through his hair, looking very disquieted. What the hell have I done? You're right, bro. I went far too far. And Janice Coder is not worth this. I nodded. I won't say anything, Danny. I'm not completely stupid. My lips are sealed. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to be locked up indefinitely. By the way, do you agree with me? I asked for a second time, to confirm my worst fears and suspicions. Do you think the two creatures are going to eat Lucas? My brother's expression was troubled. He looked tormented. He nodded. Why else would they have taken him off like that? He was an easy meal, was he not? Those things, whatever they are wild and dangerous. That's very clear. They must have thought it was Christmas to see their prey tied up to a tree like that. It's like finding a large sheep in the deep freezer that's been prepared for you by the butcher. Why do you think the female creature took Lucas's clothes away with her? Why would she do a thing like that? My brother shrugged his shoulders. Good question, Eric. I'd be damned if I know the answer to that one. You don't think by any chance they might have been trying to help him? I asked, with hope billowing in my heart. Absolutely not. Chance would be a fine thing. Why would they ever help him? Said my brother. I do remember it went around the school like wildfire, that Lucas Fairweather had just vanished from school, without anyone knowing what had happened to him. He was described as having mysteriously vanished without a trace, like those 411 cases you hear about. Even Janice Coder didn't have the courage to come clean about finding Lucas's stamp album in the woods and arranging a rendezvous to meet him there. She probably knew she'd get into an awful lot of trouble for going into the woods in the first place by Mrs. Kendridge when it was not permitted to do so. My brother noticed she simply slipped Lucas's stamp album into a desk that he used during math class and said nothing about the planned meeting that day, although she did look decidedly sheepish, as if she was wrestling with a private guilt. As far as everybody was concerned, Lucas Fairweather had just gone missing, disappearing into thin air. No one knew where he was. It was automatically assumed that someone with ill intent had kidnapped the young teenager for nefarious reasons. Well, that was the manner of the inquiry the police were pursuing. They had received a so-called anonymous tip from a woman caller who claimed to have seen a frightened young teenager being forcefully pushed into a man's car. So the police were following this fake lead that some weirdo had obviously made up just for the sake of it. The police came to the school to ask questions, and the school property was thoroughly searched, including the outskirts of the woods, but not a trace of Lucas Fairweather was found. No one knew what had happened, and they even had a candlelight vigil for Luke Fairweather, where tears were shed, and everyone was saying what a wonderful person he was. And the teachers kept talking about his potential, of what they believed he would one day become. This is a tragic event, if ever I saw one. A total travesty, said Mrs. Kenridge in assembly. One of our star pupils, Lucas Fairweather, has gone missing in nefarious circumstances. It grieves my heart to see this happening to one of our students. I will strongly encourage every one of you to be very vigilant, and under no circumstances should you ever accept a lift from a stranger. I strongly discourage you from hitchhiking. I know many of you teenagers do it, but I would say don't trust strangers. There are evil people in this world that live among us, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, Lucas has ended up in the wrong company. I do vividly recall at the candlelight vigil, Lucas's mother was in a dreadful state, blaming herself for allowing her son to walk home on his own. With Lucas's disappearance, everyone began tightening the reins. Pupils were forbidden from going anywhere without parental supervision. People feared the very worst, and everyone naturally assumed that Lucas Fairweather was dead. Me and my brother did not assume. We knew he was dead. He had been eaten alive by those two scary humanoids that we had encountered in the woods. It was a rough time for the both of us. I was frayed emotionally and falling apart at the seams. I was so close to cracking up under the weight of my guilt. My mother wondered why I wasn't eating after I pushed my dinner plate away for 2 consecutive nights in a row. I didn't have the stomach to eat anything, as I visualized the 2 hairy creatures ripping off Luke's body parts, like dismembering the legs off an insect and eating them like you or I might enjoy a Frankfurter sausage together. Those harrowing images harassed my mind, robbing me of getting any peaceful sleep. I was developing into a nervous wreck, and I regret to say it rarely showed. "Love, what on earth is wrong with you?" my mother asked me, fixing her troubled eyes on me. "Eric, you haven't been looking good lately. You've got dark circles under your eyes, as if you haven't been sleeping properly. Come to think of it, you haven't been acting like yourself either. Danny, you've also grown rather sombre of late. The 2 of you are in a bad place at the moment. What on earth is going on?" "It's true," said my father, studying us through his glasses and frowning. "Something's irking the both of them. You boys have not been very communicative recently." My mother nodded. "Both of you? Normally you both have a furious appetite. You in particular, Eric. Now thinking about it, you're looking rather gaunt. You know you can't afford not to eat, or your pants will quite literally fall off you. Go on, eat your roast potatoes. They're your favourite, are they not? I've even made some apple pie for pudding. I know it's not the crumble Mrs. Berry makes at your school. I wouldn't have a clue how to make something like that. But it's the next best thing, isn't it? I can't have you losing too much weight, Eric. I'm your mum. I can't let that happen. What is going on with you, love? I wish you would talk to me. Has someone upset you at school?" "It's probably that boy at school that's gone missing. What's his name?" said my father. "What's his name again? I've forgotten. Oh, yes, Lucas Fairweather. I'm quite sure it's probably taken a toll on all the students at school. I believe someone witnessed the young man being forced into a car. What is the world coming to these days, that we have to worry about our teenagers?" "Sweetheart," said my mother, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Is this about Lucas Fairweather, the boy that went missing? Is this causing you grievous upset? Is that why you're not eating?" A big fat sorry tear rolled down my cheek, followed by another and another. I couldn't stop myself. My brother cast me don't you dare looks. I think he was petrified I was going to spill the beans and tell my parents everything that had happened that day in the woods. But even I wasn't that stupid. I didn't want them to know anything about what had happened, and I would be a fool to divulge such a secret. "He's just upset, Mum," said my brother, interceding. "Everybody is upset at school at the moment. No one knows what happened to Lucas, do they?" "Oh, I'm so sorry, Eric. You're such a sensitive soul, aren't you, love?" said my mother, rubbing my hand. "Granted it is upsetting, I know it is, but you know what they say, no news is good news. Isn't that right, Bernard?" she said, glancing back at my father for support. But to her surprise, she did not receive it. "For heaven's sake, Patricia," said my father, giving her a formidable glare. "You do only half go on." My father may have been a man of few words, but he had something to say now. "For goodness sake, woman, don't give our sons false hope. I hate it when you do that. Everybody knows that Lucas Fairweather is dead. We would have heard something by now if he was going to be all right. I know you mean well, love, but it's best our teenagers know the truth, instead of their hopes being rudely dashed. I don't want that to happen to them. They need to face up to what is likely happening to the young teenager. It's not nice, it's brutal, I know, but we have to be big about this." "Honestly, Bernard, how can you say all that? People sometimes go missing and are found later. Why are you being so negative about this?" "Not in this case," said my father with certainty. "Everybody knows the teenager is dead. There is no doubt about this in my mind. I couldn't stomach any of this anymore. This soul-destroying conversation was getting me down. So I rescued myself from the table, locking myself in the bathroom with the taps running at full blast in the sink, while I cried my eyes out. If my brother had not been playing his silly games, then Lucas Fairweather would still be alive. This was all his fault. I had not noticed him expressing any interest in Janice Kildare of late. Maybe my brother had lost interest in her already. It would be so typical of him. It was the following morning at school, before school opened, that Lucas Fairweather was found by the caretaker, wandering around the playground aimlessly, in a dithery haze. He was terribly confused and disorientated. For a while he didn't even recognize the caretaker or understand where he was. I was so thrilled to find that he was safe and well. But I now had a new fear in my heart that surfaced, and that was that he might remember being hit on the head by my brother. Or at least that he was meeting my brother in the woods for that rendezvous. The police asked him questions, but 3 days of Lucas's life were a complete blank to him, and he never ever recovered the memories. He didn't know where he had been, as if his memory had been completely wiped out, and it seemed that his amnesia never recovered. Me and my brother knew exactly what had happened to him, so we came to believe that the 2 hairy beings who extracted him from the woods that day had taken him to a place of safety and nursed him back to health. But what I couldn't understand was why he had no memory of it at all. I think the blow my brother gave him to the head was far worse than we assumed, but at least Lucas Fairweather was fully recovered. I thought that Lucas might have decided to keep Storm because of those creatures that he had encountered, as people might doubt such a far-fetched story, which he would probably be unwilling to share in case he became a laughingstock. However, such an incredulous story might leave many people wondering and asking questions, but it would certainly explain why Lucas Fairweather had gone missing for 3 days, without so much as an explanation. Yet I saw no sign of duplicity in his eyes. He genuinely seemed to have no memory of the 3 days he went missing, which for me and my brother was in itself a huge relief and a godsend. It was after this inauspicious event that something in my brother changed radically. He seemed to have become calmer, more easygoing. My relationship with him improved exponentially. Even my mother commented that she hadn't seen the zombie face on my brother for a very long time. "I'm so glad to see that Danny doesn't take himself so seriously these days," she said. "The other day he was actually laughing at himself. I could hardly believe it." The weirdest thing of all was my brother never once said anything mean about Lucas Fairweather ever again, nor did he appear to have any interest in Janice Kildare. Lucas has never shown interest in the girl either. My brother courageously asked Amy Price from church on a date, and they were now seriously dating, and my brother seemed very happy and was besotted over Amy, never for a moment showing Janice Kildare even a fleeting glance. One day when I was 16 years old, I was hurriedly walking down the corridors of the school to get to my math class. I was carrying my files in my hand, and some of my notes fell out of my book, when a gust of wind blew past. It was a windy day in early autumn. Leaves were floating across the green grass, and with a huge billowing gust, my notes flew across the lawn. I promptly put down my books on the terracotta tiles in the corridor, and began to chase after my notes. And there on the grass with me, another figure came to my aid. It was Janice Kildare from Albuquerque. She was giggling as she tried to catch my notes that kept flying away. Finally she handed me several of them. We were both laughing together. "I'm Janice," she said. "You're in the class below me, aren't you? Are you not Danny's brother, Eric?" "That's right, I'm Danny's brother." "You're so different to Danny. But in a good way, I mean. I remember seeing you on my first day at school, and I was hoping you were going to be in my year. I was disappointed you were not." "I'm glad to hear that," I said. "Look, I hope you don't think this is very forward of me, but I've got 2 tickets to the movies on Saturday, and my friend Cassia can't come with me. Would you be willing to join me?" I was stunned by the invite. I was not used to a girl asking me out on a date, especially a girl from the class above me that my brother had fancied for quite some time. I thought I'd never be interested in an assertive girl, but I surprised myself because I was intrigued by Janice. I flushed pink with embarrassment and said rather coyly that I'd love to come. I did, of course, check with my brother Danny that he didn't have any lingering feelings towards Janice Kildare, as I wouldn't want to go out with her if that were the case. But Danny gave me his blessing and told me to go for it. "You're a dark horse, Eric," he said to me. "You're going for the older girls, are you?" He gave me a wink. "She's the one that asked me out," I said. "It would be churlish of me to refuse." "Ah, I see. That's the way you're going to play it, bro," said my brother, grinning at me from ear to ear. Janice Kildare became my first girlfriend, and in the beginning I was surprised to find that I really liked her a whole lot. And even though she was a year older than me, it made me feel rather mature to be going out with someone a year above me at school. One day Janice told me she wanted to tell me a big secret and show me something in the woods. She said she had something she needed to get off her chest, because we were now dating and we shouldn't keep any secrets from each other. The idea of going into the woods again was not something that remotely excited me, given my rather tumultuous memories of the last time that Lucas Fairweather was snatched away for 3 days by a couple of Bigfoot, whom in hindsight I believe took him under their charge and nursed him back to good health. The creatures I thought at the time were dangerous based on their gargantuan size were clearly benevolent, but going back to the woods again, where my fear had hit the roof, was not exactly something that I wanted to embrace. I reminded myself that if you fall off a horse, the best kind of therapy for you is to get back on it again. Perhaps a trip to the woods would not be such a bad idea after all. I only agreed to go into the woods with Janice Kildare if I could be absolutely sure that Mrs. Berry was not serving apple crumble for pudding that day, because if she was, wild horses would not keep me away. "Good job Mrs. Berry's too old to be your girlfriend," Janice joked. "I bet if Mrs. Berry was my age, you'd probably want to marry her because of her apple crumble. Do you know my dad fell in love with my mum when she made him lasagna for the very first time? That was when he knew she was the woman for him. Forget charming personality, forget good looks. That didn't count for much as far as my dad was concerned. It was the lasagna that clinched the deal for him." "You're joking, right?" I said. "No, I'm not," said Janice, chuckling. "My father would say if he could find a girl who would make good lasagna, he'd marry her in a heartbeat. And one day my mother, having heard he loved lasagna, made some for him. And it was in that moment my father promptly decided that she was definitely the woman for him, because her lasagna was the best he'd ever tasted. My mother says a way to a man's heart is through his stomach, and judging by your addiction to Mrs. Berry's apple crumble, I believe she may be right." I reflected on this for a moment. If a young woman could make apple crumble like Mrs. Berry, served up with dollops of thick custard, then yes, I probably would be tempted to marry her. It was at lunchtime at school when the gong sounded. Me and Janice Kildare made absolutely certain that no one observed us, clandestinely making our way across the school grounds towards the woods. I could not for the life of me comprehend or even understand why we had to risk life and limb going in there in the first place. But Janice was most insistent that we needed to go there for one reason or another. I was far from keen about this, but at this stage would have done anything to please my rather demanding girlfriend. It was still prohibited to go into the woods. Mrs. Kendridge, our draconian headmistress, who didn't suffer fools gladly, was as formidable and oppressive as ever when it came to her stringent, uncompromising zero-tolerance rules, and especially after Lucas Fairweather had gone missing a year prior. Her hard and fast rules had become rigorously rigid and stiff. No one under any circumstances was allowed to go into the woods to have a secret smoke of a cigarette. "If I find anybody disobeying my rules, I will ensure that they are suspended from this school forthwith. Is that understood?" "Yes, Mrs. Kendridge," the school had chorused in a monotonous cadence of bored voices that sounded as if everybody was fast asleep. "Good, I'm very glad I've made myself absolutely clear. It has come to my unfortunate attention that certain pupils in this school have been taking it upon themselves to disobey my rules, and I for one will not abide by such insubordination. If I find anyone sneaking off to have a cigarette, that person will wish that they had never been born. Have I made myself perfectly understood?" "Yes, Mrs. Kendridge," came the dull drone of voices that echoed back at her again, like an obedient drum roll. At this point I'd been going out with Janice Kildare for a few months. Once again there was a considerable nip in the air. It was a familiar, uncomfortable feeling. A repeat of Groundhog Day again in the woodgrove, as everything appeared to replicate exactly what it had been like when I'd been here a year prior, when Lucas Fairweather, in a comatose state, had unfortunately been snatched away by 2 Bigfoot, causing me and my brother no end of horrifying disquiet, as we wondered, with hearts infested by grief and guilt, what had become of the young teenager, until thankfully he was found on the school grounds safe and well, wandering around in a dithery daze, not knowing what day of the week it was, never mind what he was actually doing on the school grounds, as his fragile, distorted memory of those few days, when he appeared to have vanished into thin air for no good reason at all, was thankfully obliterated and never recovered. "Why did you bring me here into the woods?" I asked Janice, as we walked through the trees together, listening to the pretty, cheerful birdsong and enjoying the soft gasps of sunlight that spilled through the branches of the trees from the canopy above our heads. "I just wanted to talk to you about something, that's all," said Janice. "Come and sit next to this hollow stump," she said, pointing to the oak tree, where Lucas Fairweather had been tied up with a rope by my brother. The memory of that made me shudder. "Are you all right?" asked Janice, studying me through narrowing eyes, as we sat down together on the earthen floor, our legs stretched out before us. "If you don't mind my saying, you've gone awfully white. You're shaking a little." "I'll be fine," I said. "It's just a little cold, perhaps." I tried to throw away the flashbacks that tormented my mind. "Why did you bring me here into the woods, Janice? What is the secret you wanted to convey to me?" Janice laced her hands together, avoiding any eye contact with me for a brief moment. "Do you remember when Lucas Fairweather went missing, and no one knew what happened to him? About a year ago it was." "Of course I remember. How could anybody forget a time like that?" "Well, on that day that he disappeared, I mean, I had arranged to meet him in the woods. One of the boys told me he wanted to see me. I was ever so excited. You see, I really liked Lucas at the time. I thought he was going to tell me he had a huge crush on me. But when I came into the woods, I found his stamp collection lying on the ground. His stamps were all over the place, but Lucas, he was nowhere to be seen. I picked up his leather album, and the stamps, of course, and returned them to the desk he uses for math. I never told the police what I knew. I was terribly afraid of getting into trouble with Mrs. Kendridge. You know what she's like. I was afraid of being suspended. But I think that whatever happened to Lucas Fairweather, it must have happened here in these woods. I know he has no memory of the event. Do you think I'm a bad person for not telling the police what I knew?" "Of course I don't," I said gingerly, taking her hand in mine. "We all have our secrets, don't we? We've all done things we're not proud of, things we regret." "Oh, I'm so relieved to hear you say that, Eric. I thought you'd think badly of me for not coming forward and telling the police what I knew. But I just couldn't do it. I was so afraid." "Don't blame yourself for that." All of a sudden, as we sat under the tree, I kid you not, we heard voices coming our way, a male and a female speaking quite loudly, and this time I knew who those voices belonged to. "Kinatilaka o kolapati." "Ah, minakala siya na kwa." "Hilakita o lapana." "Oh, kilani, ha sila fato." "Itali kolobo, itilano." "Ah, ginagui." If ever there was a repeat of Groundhog Day, it sure was today. But thank God this time Lucas Fairweather was not tied to a tree like last time, so the events of this moment would roll forward with a different spin. That I knew for sure. "Someone's coming," said Janice in alarm. "I don't want us to get into trouble. It could be one of the teachers. What are we going to do?" We both went and hid behind a tree, as the voices got closer and closer. The voices were animated and expressive, spoken in a foreign language that I didn't understand. I kid you not, once again the male and female Bigfoot came into view, talking together intently, using hand gestures to express themselves. But as I hid behind the tree, I watched them this time in abject fascination, for I knew that they would never harm me. For a moment I even forgot that Janice Kildare was next to me, as I got caught up in the moment. When I glanced at her, she was the one trembling in terror, her eyes wide open, her body shaking. I reached out to squeeze her hand. "They won't harm you," I whispered to her. "I've seen them before." Janice looked relieved and seemed to calm down a little, but she did look as if she was holding her breath. The Bigfoot stopped for a brief moment and grew very quiet. They both looked at each other with what I can only describe as a sense of knowing, and that was when I realized that they must have sensed our presence. To my horror, the Bigfoots both walked over to where me and Janice were hiding and pulled back the curtain of shrubbery, and for a moment we both locked eyes with the formidable creatures, who locked eyes with us in return, but they simply nodded at us and then glided away. We could hear the distant chatter of their voices. "Kilati na, kuluputulo shaka. Ah, kilati, amanasi. Ikalataku, opugulo. Ah, kikakwasana, ah, kilaso." For a long time, Janice and I just stared at each other, not saying a single word. Janice's eyes were as wide as saucers. "Did that just happen?" she asked me. "Tell me this was a dream." "I can't do that," I said, "because it wasn't." "What are they?" she asked me. I'd be damned if I know, because at that time I didn't know what they were. Looking back, I have to smile. Janice Kildare did end up breaking my heart. I can't say I'm surprised. A new boy arrived at school and completely captured her attention, and I didn't get a look in. Lucas Fairweather never recovered his memory over what happened to him on those few days he went missing. If he did remember, then he wasn't telling anyone about the incident and keeping stum. In his shoes, I'd likely have done much the same. As was predicted, Lucas Fairweather ended up becoming a successful entrepreneur, making it big for himself. I understand he's a multimillionaire many times over, and I can't say I'm surprised about that. I'm glad to say my fun-loving brother Danny has become the most chilled person I know. We're very close, and he's now married to his childhood sweetheart, Amy Price from church. They have 2 children. As for the Bigfoots, I never saw them again, but there isn't a day that goes by that they don't cross my mind, because they seriously impacted my life. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Wow, what a beautiful story. Until next time, goodbye and good night.